Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about The Magicians, the TV show, and obviously I'm going to get into spoilers, which that might also already be apparent depending on what I titled this video and the thumbnail. But obviously this is me going to be particular talking about some stuff that went down in the finale, so if you're not caught up with The Magicians, do not watch this video. But obviously, you know, going into spoilers and everything, we know that Quentin dies at the end of season 4, and obviously the show is continuing, you know, it did get renewed for a 5th season. So it's an interesting thing because I think it's kind of a fascinating conversation because it was like in, you know, my review of it, I saw this discussion kind of pop up. Obviously for some people, they feel like Quentin was the main character of, you know, the TV show. So for them, it's, for some people, it's like, oh, the show's going to be completely different now. It's almost going to be like a new show without Quentin. Or the fact is that for some, I've even heard someone write like, oh, the show was over for them now that Quentin's gone. Like they probably just don't feel like as connected to the show because they, you know, love Quentin, which I loved Quentin too. But another conversation came up that I thought was kind of fascinating because I really kind of put my own opinion out there. I kind of lean more to the thought of like another comment that I saw. I kind of lean into more of the thought of like Quentin isn't just the main protagonist, he's one of many. Like the fact of the matter is, I feel like season 1, yes, he was like the main focus, and yes, a lot of the story was told from his perspective, but you know, because a lot of it was kind of, you know, the show even kind of pokes fun at the fact is it's almost setting him up to be the hero. That was always kind of a bit of, you know, Quentin's story. He wanted to be the hero, and season 1 heavily pushed that, but obviously as the show has gone on, like everyone else is taking main stage. So it's not just Quentin's story because the show dedicated just as much time to the other main characters as well. So it's not just one main character. Even though he started off as the focus, it's heavily diverged. It's actually kind of interesting because this particular comment that I said I kind of agreed with, it was kind of interesting because for them, like, especially in the book, like Quentin is like the first perspective in the books, but then later on it's like Julia, then Elliot, then the character, I think the character's name is Juliet. I think the person was saying is who Margot's character is in the show. It's who Margot is based on from the book. But nevertheless, I just thought that was such an interesting thing of like basically saying what I'm kind of saying of like the show switches perspectives all the time, which like I said, yes, I get it. I'm going to miss Quentin too because this is a character you've kind of gotten to know and attached to for 4 whole seasons, and you know, you've always been cheering for him, and to kind of see him gone now is kind of crazy. And that's such, to me, that's such an interesting discussion because like, you know, I brought it up before the whole discussion of like, you know, killing a main character off at the end of a series and stuff like that. It's typically the times when you do that. Like obviously there's superhero things that obviously that's a whole conversation in itself with someone that picks up the mantle. Obviously that to me kind of fits the similar vein because once again that's another conversation too. Like look at the MCU potentially, like, you know, in the comic books, who picks up the mantle of Captain America after Steve's situation plays out the way it does, or you know, Tony's situation, like whatever the case may be with the MCU. Obviously with the comic books you kind of delved into that, but obviously that's something the MCU potentially will have to deal with, obviously depending on how Endgame plays out and how the rest of the MCU goes proceeding forward. So it's not a situation of you can't do it, because those are the exact same parallels when you actually think about that, because it's like, you know, like I said, in Quentin's situation, you've followed him for this long, and same thing for these characters in the MCU, and some of them might be perma-dead, you know? There might not be any coming back for them, so it might be a situation, you know, I mean, it's comic books, so that can always change, but you get what I'm trying to say, and I think that's such a fascinating discussion. And because someone else had said like, oh, it's gonna feel like a completely different show. I disagree with that because I'm like, the show has always been these other perspectives. You're losing one of the perspectives. I mean, to be fair, that doesn't mean that some other character won't come up to fulfill that role, kind of fill in that empty space that, you know, Quentin left. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, to me, I don't think the show is going to change. It's still going to be like the awesome and crazy show that it always has been. But it's just one of those things of like, I feel like you don't get that a lot. Like, especially because that's why I was kind of like, holy crap, that felt like a series finale rather than like a season finale, because like you're killing off like Quentin like that, because I never would have guessed you would do something like that. But I think that obviously that holds weight storytelling wise, because it's like, okay, these characters who are like his closest friends and people who care about him most have to carry on without him, and I think that's good character development and stuff like that. Obviously I'm curious, like I said, this is just based on stuff I saw from the comments. I'm curious like how generally people feel about that situation of like, are they a little reluctant going forward with the show because they loved Quentin so much and it's like without him it just doesn't feel the same? I don't know, because I've never really experienced that with a show, because typically, like I've said, like when it comes to like a main protagonist dying, it's maybe at the end. And once again, that comes down to the whole conversation of where you stand on the whole situation. Do you think of Quentin as like one of the main characters, or was he the main protagonist? like I wrote up earlier, feel like just like in the beginning, yes, they kind of pushed him to be like the main protagonist, but now I looked at him as like, no, he's just one of many main protagonists. It's kind of how I look at, because they did such a good job of giving every of the other main characters their own limelight. It wasn't just like, oh, Quentin and the crew. It's like, it's Quentin, it's Alice, it's Julia, it's Margot, it's Ellie, it's Penny, it's Katie. It's like they found their own spots. They found their own. I mean, there's literally an episode this season that dealt with like, oh, let's talk about the side characters. Like, I think it kind of fed into that. I mean, it could have been foreshadowing this the entire time when you actually think about it. Like, the only show I can really think of that will probably arguably do something like that, I guess you make the argument of The Walking Dead, but even then it wasn't kind of like a, I mean, I think them killing Carl was kind of like a step in that direction. Like, whoa, didn't expect that, which I guess that's spoilers. But everything with Rick, even though Rick technically isn't dead, doesn't mean eventually whenever the movies or whatever that situation is plays out, doesn't mean that eventually they won't kill Rick. I mean, the thing is, he's still alive in the comic books, at least to my knowledge. You know, I always say stuff like that and then I'm like, oh, because I don't read the comic books, so I don't know. So it's not until I look stuff up, I'm like, oh, that person's dead. I totally thought they were still alive the entire time. It's like that turnaround could be really quick of a character die. So it's kind of that similar vein of like, Rick isn't in The Walking Dead anymore, but he's not technically dead, but he's like the main protagonist in that case. So, but then, like I said, it's kind of a different circumstance. Like, I think he still was kind of put at the forefront of being like the main protagonist, whereas in this, like I said, it seemed like they heavily made everyone else the main protagonist as well. But once again, it's that whole situation of, well, Quentin's situation is like, because it's not like a, oh, it's the end and then you got this, you know, new series or something, not like using, like, it's not like a the original situation of like, oh yeah, like that was kind of Klaus's story. It's kind of the Michelson story as a whole, but like Klaus dies at the end, and obviously Legacies has, you know, Hope being like the main protagonist of it. It's not that same situation. It's like, once again, we're continuing the show without him. And it's not like, oh, he died in season 1. It's like he died in season 4 and we're coming back for a 5th season without him. So it's like, to me, it's such an interesting discussion. And at the end of the day, that ultimately is my question. Where do you stand in that whole topic? Do you agree that like, oh, he was like the main protagonist and you feel weird about the show going forward? Or are you one of the people that's like, no, he's one of the main protagonists. He's one of, not the only one. And the fact of the matter is, you're eager to see what they do going forward. I kind of lean more in that camp, but I can understand why someone else would have that other perspective as well. So it's like I said, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.